Welcome to Market Your Science, the podcast that dives into the world of life science marketing. Join me, Martina Neville, and Jane Antique as we unravel the mysteries and conquer the challenges faced by life science companies looking to communicate their research.
Howdy, everybody. Welcome to another
Hello.
episode of Market Your Science. I'm going to cough. Sorry. I'm clearing my throat because we've got a distinguished guest with us that I absolutely adore. She just
You're
echoes
so
and
kind.
ripples waves across LinkedIn, and so I'm not going to steal her thunder. We don't steal thunder on this our podcast, so take it away, Claudia. Introduce yourself to us.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Martina. Hi, Janae. Thank you for having me on
Hello.
and for the very, very generous introduction. I'm very, very happy to be here with you.
Great. Claudia, what is it that you do and just so that everybody kind of gets acquainted to your sphere of work?
Yeah, I'm a strategic advisor, work independently, and I founded Seek and Bio, which is my small consultancy firm in 2022. We've met with Martina and Janae over LinkedIn because I've been creating content for 9 months roughly. Started mid 2023, and it's kind of taken off and accelerating. I love to share what I do, and I love to share bits and pieces of science and strategy as well. So I started out working mostly with startups and then kind of pivoted and decided that SMEs and bigger corporates were probably a better target for me. And then I also am working actively on um, let's say building my network of investors so that I can do one day those worms introductions that will make life easier for both the investor and the startups trying to raise money. So that's an ongoing process.
It sounds like it's the other side of the shoe that most PhDs and startups uh, just don't know enough about. It's a very mysterious. I
Yeah.
like to say that it's a bit of a cloak and daggery world. Like you look at the opening sequence of the Da Vinci Code with Tom Hanks, and you go, yeah, that kind of feels like investors and how they deal with them. So, and yeah, I guess like it'd be great to know. First of all, what made you decide that you needed to utilize platforms like LinkedIn and actually just start going, oh, I actually need to do some marketing?
um, well, we are kind of bombarded by how influencer marketing works
Hmm.
forever. We've been bombarded with it forever. And very early on, so I started Seek and Bio in September 2022. And very early on,
Hmm.
I started thinking about what can I do to get the message out. And the idea of influencer, let's call it influencer marketing, but basically social media marketing was very top of my mind. And
Hmm.
that time I wasn't aware that LinkedIn had become such a good tool for that, because to me LinkedIn was a job board.
Ah,
Used to be,
that old
yeah, it used
trope.
to be where I went, and yeah, used to be the place where you went and looked for a job, and that's
Mm.
how I had always used it in the past. um, and then I started using it more consistently end of 2022, beginning 2023. And I realized that people were creating content on LinkedIn and it was working well. And there was this creator mode thing that
Mm.
was available. Now it's not anymore. News from the LinkedIn, algorithm people trying to catch up with it. And then yeah, so I said, I thought to myself, yeah, what better way for someone who has zero budget to do actual marketing or do PR
Mm.
than starting to create content. The I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know how to optimize it. I didn't know who to talk to. I didn't know how to create my persona. I'm very bad at selling myself, which is an absolute disgrace for someone who's a solopreneur. So you kind of have to sell yourself to sell your services, and
Mm.
so that's an absolute disgrace to confess. But
No, don't be so hard on
I started
yourself.
following. Yeah, I know, but yeah, yeah, just telling it as it is.
Mm.
And so I started following a bunch of people, and I don't know how that happened, but the first person who I ever saw kind of coaching people on how to use LinkedIn to create content and therefore grow a network was Sebastian Simoncelli,
Oh
who we believe,
yeah.
and I actually purchased an hour of his time. I'm a big believer on sort of fueling the freelance community.
Mhm.
And so when I need a service and I can afford it, I do buy this service from another freelancer.
Yeah.
And so he was the very first freelancer. Well, it was actually the second freelancer I purchased a service from. First one being the guy who created my website, because I don't know how to do that either. And so yeah, and so Sebastien, who's a gold mine of information
Mm.
regarding how to be effective at creating LinkedIn content, took 1 hour of his time to instruct me and then sent me an amazingly detailed presentation about what to concentrate on, the funnel, top of funnel, middle funnel,
Mm.
bottom funnel thing. Um, and that was all it took for me to get unstuck and start creating content. Now I don't go by the book, I don't go by the top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel, whatever. And I don't even have, even though I try, I don't even have a set schedule for my posts.
Mm.
Even though I do the Mergers Monday thing because
Mm.
it rhymes and I love alliteration. So
Yeah.
that's one way for me. Yeah, that's one way for me to at least have one post that is more or less always on the same theme every Monday, but
Mm.
the rest of the week is kind of, whatever comes to my mind or whatever is hot
Mm.
in the industry. And so yeah, I started creating content and I found, first of all, my community, and then a couple of customers as well, which is not bad.
I was gonna say community and then customers. Oh, who would have thought, hey? Oh yeah, you put out you give something to people and suddenly they all come back. I feel like it's that friends episode where Monica ends up putting candies outside her door and suddenly she gets loads of people coming out like, oh yeah, can I have some more candy? You're the candy lady, aren't you? So, uh, and I think,
I love that.
I feel like one of the things that drew me to you, and this is what draws me to specific people on LinkedIn,
mm,
is that you come across as authentic. And this is definitely going to come across as throwing shade at some people, and it is.
okay,
Um,
hang on, carry on.
but yeah, this is
Cheap.
it's one of the things that I love about what you post is that it feels real.
Mm,
And I think there is a lack of that on platforms like LinkedIn. So when someone like you comes in and behaves in an authentic way,
mm,
people are naturally drawn to that because they're like, well, I'm sick of seeing this crap. I'm going to be drawn
Yeah.
to people that are truth tellers and feel like they understand me.
mm.
And I mean, I know this is something we've
And
spoken about before, but what do you all think about that,
mhm.
Jane? I know you're big on that as well.
I'll let Claudia say something first.
Yeah, and you know what? And in the beginning, first few months of me creating content, and again, I haven't been doing this for a very long time. It's not even a year. I did that one-on-one with Sebastian in May last year, so it's not even a year since I started creating content. And I realized that once I kind of took off that very professional, very stuck up facade, I started doing even better.
Mm,
So people started coming back to my content once I started to share more about myself,
mm,
um, which felt very uncomfortable in the beginning, even though, as I was telling you offline, I'm a serial oversharer. That's just because, I like to talk, and when I feel comfortable with people, I start oversharing.
mm,
But it felt very hard and very vulnerable place to be to share so much about myself out there for so many people.
mm,
But it pays off, and it
mm,
pays off in so many ways. Of course, it pays off business wise, but it specifically pays off from a human interaction perspective.
mm.
And I found a tremendous growth on that. um, it's been amazing from that point of view.
So I'm going to put a hypothesis here. My hypothesis is authentic human interaction equals successful business. So do you feel that that's the case?
I would say so. And I've had proof that is the case even before I went the entrepreneurial way. it's always been like that. Building relationships with clients, even when you're a corporate gal, like I
Mm.
was,
Mm.
is of amazing value, and it will stay with you, and it will help you nurture. And it's true when I was an account manager for life science companies. I have been for a long time.
Mm.
Um, and so nurturing relationships with your clients mean that if you don't do the sale on day one on Q1, you will probably do it on Q4,
Mm.
and so it stays with you. Um, the fact that you're talking to a person, you're meeting a person, you're not meeting a client, a number on your spreadsheet,
Mm.
which of course to your company they are, but if you treat them like a human being um, who is sentient first of all, and then who has feelings.
Mm.
It stays with you, and it will give better results than if you treat them like a number.
Abs-
Hopefully that makes sense.
No, no, that absolutely makes sense. And I think so. This is the thing. There's a. I haven't actually gotten down to it yet. It's a level of, I guess, human psychology that we can go into, but it's very relevant for, I guess, people who are bridging the gap from breaking away from their either academia or from companies, and then being that solopreneur. And whatever context it is, whether they decide to stay with the company and do something on the side, or whether they actually just leave altogether and
Yeah.
brave it. But there must have been like a really a tough disconnect, like I call it the divorce period, right? Where you're divorcing the side of you that you go, this isn't going to work for what I want to really do, and you must have had a divorce period where you were trying to figure out, okay, I'm going to stop being the stuck up person that I'm portraying myself to be when I was an account manager for this company, and now I need to morph into something else. What's
Mm.
that journey like? Because everybody's journey is different, and I think that a lot of people will find, if you speak your journey, there's going to be some commonalities that get dropped. And I have some hypotheses, but I just want to hear it from you. Like, what was your journey of divorcing yourself from your old
Mm.
persona, let's say?
So first of all, when you talk about divorcing your business person that I was when I was employed, well, I had more than one instance of that, and it's always painful, but it gets less painful as time goes by, and then as
Mm.
experience accumulates. It's of course more painful when you feel like you've been treated unjustly, compared
Mm.
to the contribution that you've provided. And this is probably the driving force as to why I decided to go the entrepreneurial way, because then if I was messing up, then I would be accountable to myself and myself alone. And if I was doing well, then I would at some point find a way to congratulate myself, which I'm not very good at doing, but getting better, um, which I think is important
Mm.
from a growth perspective. And then yeah, the divorce kind of the definitive divorce, I would say, kind of happened around 2021.
Mm.
And that's when I decided to quit a very well paid job as a director of business development. Um, well, it came from a place where I was in a company that I didn't like very much because it was a CRO CDMO.
Mm.
Was my first time in a CRO CDMO, so selling service rather than product. Um, and where we didn't have the same notion of what business development should entail. And we were still in the throes of COVID. So being
Mm.
a business developer stuck at home, fully remote, with hours and hours and hours and hours of useless meetings per week, was just getting unbearably boring, to be completely honest.
Mm. We've been there.
Unbearably bored. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then at that point, I felt like I needed to do something completely different, and
Mm.
I did.
Mm.
That's when I did what I was mentioning a few days ago about that neuropsychology certificate.
Yeah.
And I did that for about 9 months. Wrote a paper, got published. It was amazing. And then I was again kind of at the crossroads again. And then I thought, you know what, I'm just going to do what I've been thinking about doing for a long time, but never quite felt ready to do,
Mm.
which is become an entrepreneur. And just to be completely clear, I've never felt ready to do it. I just did it despite feeling that way.
Click.
I don't think you ever quite feel ready to sell unless you have a shit ton of money in the bank.
Yeah, yeah. I was gonna say, because Martina, you feel that personally firsthand. I was just thinking, did you have a similar divorce journey?
Um, well, I've been thinking about setting up a business for years, and I talked myself out of it. And also, I'm married to someone who is a finance person, and he's very sensible. So I'm the risk taker, and
Mm.
he is totally
Mhm.
risk averse. So, which is good. It's great.
Hmm.
But he talked me out of it for a long time. And then, yeah, similar in my last role, it wasn't that they were lovely. They're really lovely. I mean, I'm going back to them, as you know.
Hey!
Um, but I just got to a point where I left that job and I thought, it's either now, do I apply for more jobs or do I just take the risk and set up on my own?
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
and I was lucky I had a client ready to go. So I just set up. I was like, well, I'll do it now.
Mm.
I just want to see what it's like, see if I like it. If it doesn't work out, hey ho.
Yeah.
And that was it.
I feel like that's the same mentality with, like, if you you go out and you go, oh, I'm gonna market myself. I'm gonna market my sites. Hey, let's try it out, see how it goes, and if it doesn't work out, hey, oh, right? Although
Exactly.
I think I'm over conflating it, because the risk of actually setting up your own business versus the risk of actually starting your own, getting your science out there and marketing it, is two different levels of conflation. Because on the one
Mm.
hand, there's a lot of, like, actual fiscal risk that can actually damage you in the long run
Yeah.
if you're setting
Mm-hmm.
up your own company, if you make too many mistakes and it's not proving fruitful for you. But on the other side, I don't think that it's the same. The trend of risk is the same way with marketing, because I think, Claudia, you've already seen the upward trajectory in the last 9 months of you just putting your knowledge out there and people receiving it very well. And
Yeah.
I think that kind of goes to the question of, like, again, risk. When you were going through the process of figuring out what you needed to do and how you wanted to go about doing it, was it like one of those? How was it? Was it a long, arduous process, or was it just kind of clean cut? I'm going to do it, and I just make snap decisions.
Yeah, more like the latter. And I sometimes I hate myself for being the impulsive type of person, which
Mm,
is totally not how I am in business. The funny and frustrating thing about it is when it comes to making decisions for myself, I have to make a conscious and yeah, a conscious effort to sit down and take the decision slowly rather than go into it recklessly.
mm,
Whereas when I do it for clients, when I work with people, I am all for strategy. I'm all for analyzing things to the detail. And I know it's frustrating because when it comes to myself, I sometimes I don't think twice about it, and
mm,
then kind of pay the consequences because then I have to run after the things that I haven't done, which had to be done before, which should have had to be done before. And
mm.
sometimes is the consequences are minor, but sometimes the consequences are a little bit more severe. When it means setting up a field, a bank account, professional bank account, and you haven't done that, and we're setting up your account, your accounts. How do you say? Keeping your numbers basically, and
Yeah.
6 months into your business, and you haven't done any of that. Please don't do what I do. People listening,
uh,
please don't do what I do.
I know. We think so, Martina, you were saying something about it earlier, and how, like, actually, you had a post about it, and you were saying how, like, leaders shouldn't be underestimated, especially in, like, solopreneur or entrepreneur situations, because, like, they're pretty much doing every single hat under the sun,
Oh,
and they're not even qualified to
yeah.
do it. Like,
Oh
they're just,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. It's tough.
And, well, first of all, this I think this is an opportunity to say congratulations on, doing that, managing to tick the boxes to keep your business operational. But also, this is a great flex, right? You should be proud of this, because I'm gonna just go out on and plucking out a slightly arbitrary but well-founded and educated sort of number here that I'd say 90% of solopreneurs don't do the job that you do right now of marketing themselves, and if they do, they're doing it horrifically. They're relying on word of mouth and relationships and referrals to do the job that they need to do, when that's a one-on-one thing and not a one-to-many relationship happening. And I think that you should be very like, pat yourself on the back and grab yourself a nice latte for just, being able to do that, because that's a really hard job, especially if it's not your natural flex as well. But then also I think there's the other side of it, which is how do you keep it up? Like the energy to maintain it, I guess. And I think this is probably the other thing, because you get told about, oh yeah, this is your metaphorical crossing the chasm once you've actually started doing it. The other bit is now keeping the pace of going through that chasm. So like, what's that like for you? I mean, because you mentioned that you already do, like, you post whatever you feel like you're posting, but then, like, I remember we had a conversation about what you want to do next in terms of direction for content, and it was like, well, where do you go with it? How do you do it? And is this the way that you keep pace, or is there a different way of going about it?
Well, again, I would love to be able to say that there is a rhyme and reason about what I post, and a very editorially um, tailored
Mm,
calendar, I would say, but that's not the case. That's not the case because I have a bunch of drafts that I want to post about, and
mm,
I've been writing about two subject therapy approvals for 2 weeks and still haven't gotten the chance to post about that. That's just because I felt like posting something else.
mm,
Last week I posted that poll about neuroscience, and
mm.
that wasn't something that I had in mind before I did, and I actually forgot that I'd scheduled that post. Second time that happens to me. But that's because that's how I felt in the moment. And again,
Mm.
going back to the fact that I'm rather impulsive, I scheduled that post, and if I had to think twice about posting that, I probably wouldn't have, because I would have chickened out of asking people,
Mm.
and I would have chickened out of on the idea of posting about neuroscience, because given that neuroscience is my academic background and not my industry background, I don't feel qualified enough, if that makes sense,
That
to talk
does.
about it. And so, um, sorry, I think I forgot what the original question was about. I just
It,
went
it,
on the
it,
tangent.
no, go on, sorry. Martina, you gonna say something?
Oh no, I was just
Yeah,
going to say it was how you're going to keep pace.
yeah.
Yeah. Um, well, first of all, I've been trying not to put too much pressure on myself about being overly consistent. Um, Obviously, a degree of consistency is necessary, and I
Mm,
have noticed that if I'm not consistent, meaning if I post 5 days one week and then don't post at all the following week, then obviously engagement is going to go down. But do I really care about that? Relatively, it would be lying if I said that I don't care, but I also would be lying if I said that my entire life depended on it. So,
mm,
I try to be relative about that.
mm,
And then how do I keep up? Well, recurring things help.
mm.
The Mergers Monday thing,
Yep.
kind of, if it was the only post I wrote for a week, then so be it.
Mm,
But it kind of keeps me consistent, and I enjoy posting about that. I enjoy doing the research part, going to look for what new deals have happened, and analyzing why they happen. And
mm,
sometimes you discover things that tell you a lot about the industry wide situation, the whole industry situation. It's never about a single deal, and I enjoy that immensely.
mm.
So keeping it up, it's not always easy, but I wouldn't do it if I didn't enjoy it to some degree, I guess,
Yeah.
is what I'm saying.
I'm the opposite of that because I don't like it at all and I'm on there a lot. I hate doing it. It's like totally against everything I feel in my body. Honestly, but I've done it because I knew I had to,
Mm.
but I've struggled with it. I mean, I post a lot, but it was one of the reasons why I had to just be authentic, because I thought I'm not going to be able to continue if I'm not. But every day I
Does
post.
it feel like a chore to you? Does it feel like a chore?
It's not a
to you?
chore. I just get really triggered by a lot of stuff that I see on there. A lot. And I sometimes think it's really bad for your mental health to spend too much time on there. So I think you can be a success and post once or twice a week. I've seen someone post once a week and who's now got 1 million impressions on every post he puts out there.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's possible.
Yeah, I think that, again, it goes to go back to that whole thing of it doesn't matter what form you take as long as you do it, because you know
exactly.
there's some people out there that have built this over a time where they accelerated it, and they're also, you've got a lot of different factors in there. If you think about this as like your own experiment, your factors that you're dealing with a very noisy environment from the get-go. And if I was to boil it down into a scientific analogy, the scientific analogy is that you're trying to look for the best signaling pathway for yourself, and how to and what does the signal look like, and what's that pathway. Because if you're just looking for great human interaction, you can you post down the line of authenticity, and that's what you get straight away. But if you're looking for business, you need to blend both that human interaction and that authenticity with scientific credibility, but also the value of that scientific credibility comes in. How does it help people push the needle forward? Because if it helps push the needle for you, then it help it for somebody else. And I think that's the trickiest bit about looking for that signaling pathway, because you don't know what that looks like, and you can get false positives. The false positives for me, for instance, is the ever infamous impressions, because that and then the engagement that comes off it isn't always proportional to whether you're going to get business or not out of it.
100%.
I think it's inversely proportional, if I'm honest.
I would say the same thing too. Sometimes you're like, are you because is it therefore inversely proportionate because it's building a different correlation path? What if all of the impression building exercise that you're building is laying the foundation for something a lot bigger, which is the propensity for somebody to come in and say, I want to work with you, you look like you know what you're talking about. But again, it's a very tricky balance to do all of that, because unless, of course, like, say for instance, and it depends as well, because like if you're doing marketing, for instance, that's a very fluffy situation to be in, because, like, you know, between me and Martina, we know full well that marketing is super arbitrary, because everybody seems to be an expert in it for some bizarre reason. You don't see, and you'd be
Same in science.
right?
Everyone's a science expert.
Don't get me started on that.
Exactly. And it's weird, because then you've got this like everybody's an expert in this. They feel like they can weigh in and say something and critique it, but they don't want to be in the limelight to I guess accept the level of discourse that's being responsible for being pushed around. They don't want to have the name attached to themselves when it comes to, I'm pushing this agenda. And I think that this is probably the most, when you boil it down, this is the thing that most people are afraid of doing, because humans don't like accountability. That's just really the truth of it all.
That's true.
They only want to be accountable for something if it's working for them, which is quite funny, because it's a level of like entitled dynamics that comes into play, and it all comes down to a whole bunch of factors that we can't come into. I'm not going to go into that one, but I think when you talk about your experience and how you're utilizing a lot of, like, LinkedIn, for instance, is the primary platform that you go into. Do you experience that outside? Like, let's say, for instance, if we chop away LinkedIn and we use every other method of getting yourself out there, from your website to, I don't know, email marketing or whatever, or going to conferences, do you feel like that's a different? Do you feel that those are two different environments, and do they work differently for you?
Yes and no. So, well, my website, for one, it's been from the beginning, it's been just a how do you call it, a window into my business. And actually, I'm thinking about having that revamped, because funnily enough, I started out with the idea that I wanted the website to be just business, there's not even a picture of myself on my website because I wanted it to be about the business, not about me. Whereas one thing social media has taught me is that it's the person first. So what they call the persona, obviously, in marketing, and then the business. And so perhaps I'm going to get that revamped, perhaps not. I don't know. It's just a work in progress again. And so that is to say that I haven't found that an impersonal facade has helped massively from a business perspective. Networking events and congresses, even though they're quite expensive, I try to be to as many events as I can when I can. If I don't stretch myself too thin, at some point last year I stretched myself too thin going to especially local events. And I don't want to get into that, but the local environment from the biotech perspective is very well guarded. That's all I will say about it. And so it was kind of taking a toll on me, and I decided to take a step back from that. And so if I can get to international events such as BioEurope, I would like to go to BioEurope, but I don't even know if I have the budget for that.
Yeah.
Or, other more therapeutic area specific congresses, just because sometimes I just need to listen stuff about the science, of it, and stay very, very up to date to what is happening in the science. Those are great ways to network and to stay, again, up to date to what is happening in the industry. You sometimes hear things before they get ever published in any press releases. And so that's, I think, of tremendous value, especially if you're doing the job I do and need to be ahead of the curve, so to speak. And so I enjoy those immensely. Again, I need 2 days in bed after, because I'm a little bit of an introverted extrovert. I love being around people, but it's just so draining. And so after that, it's just lying under the cover with a fiction book in my hand.
Potato day, potato days.
In an ideal world.
Yeah.
In an ideal world. I was thinking about doing Instagram, but I feel like the algorithm would be even more unforgiving than LinkedIn. We were talking about that with Martina a couple of weeks ago. Was that?
Yeah.
That you put your post out there?
It's not good for B2B.
No.
I mean, I was using it for something else, which is B2C, and it's quite successful for that. But B2B, I've not heard of much success on Instagram.
No, and I don't think so. I don't think it will.
Yeah.
I don't think it ever will. And I think that this is something where, like, when you're starting out, or you're doing this yourself, that you're looking at channels, and sometimes you go, oh, is it all just LinkedIn? I was actually having a talk with Martina about it this morning. Like, what else do I go through? And we were like, do we both venture and brave TikTok? Because I mean, not all three of us. We have got magnanimous personalities. I'm pretty sure we could run circles around some of the personalities that are there, talking about the things that we would talk to help benefit to benefit, and also smash some serious preconceived notions and biases. But like I think for us in particular, and I think this is something that, if anybody's on the podcast is gonna be like, oh, why TikTok? Oh God. But we're going through the same fences too. We're trying to figure out, do I really want to be talking at myself on a camera every odd day, or like bulk recording? Do I want to go through that process every day?
What do we think the scientists do when they're chillaxing at night?
TikTok.
They're on TikTok.
They are.
Yeah, that's true.
I can't understand why more of us aren't on it.
Yeah.
I've got an account. I just haven't done anything yet.
Well, actually, my account is for Amos, so I'm just following dogs the whole time round. But like, it's just yeah. So this is, I think it's just more the therapy behind it. But there are some like scenarios where you're just like, okay, is there an untapped way of like educating and getting a different awareness through TikTok videos? Because I know that they're now bleeding into LinkedIn. Like, it's so easy to take a video and pop it onto to LinkedIn. And also, like, a lot of the video editing software these days are all tailored towards TikTok. Like, forget all the other formats.
It's literally like gives you the thing at the end, doesn't it? Post to TikTok.
Right.
And you're like, no, I'm not going to post that to TikTok.
Yeah, stop it, leave me alone.
And I have seen a bunch of science communicators, as they call themselves, do very well on well, I don't do TikTok, but I do Instagram, which is kind of the same things, when they post reels. And I've actually very recently came across a an account now. She does this in Italian, because I'm Italian.
Yeah.
Martina knows this. And she's called Quantum Girl, and she does quantum physics over there.
I know
And I
Yeah.
don't
that is.
understand jack about quantum physics,
Mm.
and she's teaching me. And it's amazing because everybody talks about quantum physics, but I don't understand jack about it, and I want to understand about it.
Yeah.
And she's really young. She's just out of, I think, she's doing grad school,
Mm.
but she's already done TED Talks and been invited to the CERN and
Mm.
whatever. And that's because she has a platform now. And I
Mm.
think it's amazing what she's doing. And I would love to be just as good as she is at communicating the science.
Mm.
I will probably never be quite as a tease in front of a camera as she is, but
Yeah.
that's, if I ever were to brave those type of social media, that's what I aspire to do. Kind of
Mm.
make science easier,
Yeah.
because that's what I've been doing for since 2020 when I first started freelancing. I've been making science easier for people who are not scientists to understand.
Mm.
When I started freelancing, it was to explain to people what viral vectors were for and how transfection works, and
Mm.
how do you get from the viral vector to cell and gene therapy, or from the transfection reagent to the viral vector to cell and gene therapy and to curing a disease. And so, sometimes it's a good exercise to try and explain to people who know nothing about it
Mm.
how it actually works. And
Mm.
you have to kind of tap into your own creativity. And yeah, I think those are amazing channels, but you need to find your voice, which is going to be a very different type of voice than the one you have on LinkedIn. So are both sustainable? That's the question,
Yeah.
one needs to answer.
That is such a damn good question. Are both sustainable? Because
Yeah,
I'm very I'm at a position where I feel I know what my voice is and I'm confident to flex it. It is like, when you go to the gym and
yeah,
you've got your set particular types of weights and exercises that you go
yeah.
for and you go, this is what I'm doing. Martina's like, I did this morning actually. He's
No,
like,
I didn't.
you didn't go to the because you're
No,
normally
I
up at
did
like
not go to the gym.
I was
Yeah,
thinking, normally it's like
I'm
7 o'clock.
having a bad week.
Normally it's like 7 o'clock in the morning, and I'm like, all right, cool, I'm out in the gym already. And I'm like, Martina, you're too early in the morning already. But no, but it is a set of muscles that you flex really well, and the voice that you have for
Yeah,
LinkedIn is different. Because I spent years crafting it. It took me 2 years to get to the point where I go, okay, cool. And some of it's just emotional stripping. You're like divorcing yourself from certain thoughts and processes before you finally go to the position that says, if I post like this, it's just for me. The consequences aren't that dire. If somebody comes for me and says something, the worst that they can do is say something. The best that can happen is I ignore them and I move on. Then the next thing is, so what happens at the best case scenario? Somebody learns something from me. They say thank you so much.
mm,
3 to 6 months later or 12 months later, come back and say, actually, um, you did more than just like help me out there. You really transformed the way that I thought about something. I'd like to work with you more. What else can you do? And that's kind of like laying the seeds. But translating that onto TikTok is a different thing because, again, like, I'm like you, Claudia, impulsive. Sometimes I can be that beautiful S word that sometimes gets used a lot in Italian because I'm so much like I have a very strong opinion about things, and that was my protective filter. It's my barrier, right?
mm,
And some instances like Martina, you can see your face. You're just like, oh, the filter. You protect. Yeah, yeah. I have a lot of safeguards before I go. Do I post something? Okay, great. TikTok will not allow me to do that because I'll
yeah,
probably just go in a camera and I will pop off straight away, just bam. And us in the same room like that, this is probably this is an early Gen X, elder millennial vibe where we have to figure out how we're going to fit into this kind of world. And more the PhDs and the younger industry folk, they're going to be fine with this because they've been living with this for 5 years, 10 years, or they grew
yeah,
up with it. Us slightly older folk would be like, oh geez, this is going to be a challenge.
yeah, exactly,
But
exactly.
what would you say, like, are you going to try this out on TikTok? Are you going to explore it and see how it works?
Um, I think eventually I will, if I have to be completely honest.
Yeah.
I just need to understand. Well, first of all, how to very simply edit a video to make it 1.2 minutes. I think that's
Yeah.
that's the maximum length of a reel or
Mm.
whatever. Or how
4
to
minutes now.
best leverage the platform.
Is it 4 minutes?
Exactly.
Gone up to 4 minutes on TikTok.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
See, I didn't even know that. So,
Yeah.
the same thing I was talking about when first talking about how I went into writing on LinkedIn. So I do like to know how to leverage the platform before actually going into it. And then, well, there will be a huge component of me getting comfortable talking to myself in a camera, because that's really not something that I'm used to or comfortable with. Even just the fact that I would have to look at a white light to make sure that I'm making eye contact, if you will, with the audience, rather than looking at my own image and then being confronted again with my own image day in and day out and day in and day out.
And your own voice as well.
And then again, I don't have a team to do the filming and the editing and the responding to comments for me. And I know TikTok or Instagram algorithms are much more demanding than LinkedIn to keep you up in people's feeds. And so when we were talking about being consistent, LinkedIn is very much forgiving with that regards. I think especially when people start being notified of what you're posting. Some people will come back and some people will see your content even though you haven't posted for a week or two. Whereas I believe Instagram and TikTok, and I might be wrong, but I think if you are not as consistent, and meaning if you don't post every day or every 2 days, if you don't post at the same time, if you don't post with the same hashtags or whatever, even the people who subscribe to your channel won't see your content. So it sounds like a lot of work to keep it sustainable on the long term. And so I would have to find a way to streamline it well enough that I can sustain it. That and LinkedIn and my day job, because that's what pays the bills in the end. And so I think at some point I would like to try that. But I first have to have all the info aligned and all the processes ready to go, rather than go into it as I usually do. I go into things and then I figure it out. And for this one, I really need to go strategically.
It sounds like a very scientific approach, if you ask me.
I was just thinking that for someone who says she just jumps into things.
This one not going to do that.
Oh, God. And you know what? That's very funny, because it's like, this is the level of human behavior that we've come to expect. Because, we bucket the whole scientists are like rigorous, they're very thorough, they are, detail oriented. And it's like, you forget that the primary characteristic of a scientist is they're human. And we all know what humans are about. So, like, it's just.
I'm absolutely chaotic.
Yeah. Really?
It's the immediate gratification.
Loads of scientists I know are chaotic.
By the way, we've got time.
Sure.
We've got time for one more question. Well, technically it's two before the final one. Martina, have you got one particular question in mind?
No, I mean, I guess you kind of answered mine, which was, how do you keep up with it? Because it's hard work, isn't it? And then I was going to ask, do you enjoy it? And you said, yeah, I enjoy it. And I was like, oh, okay, then that's it. So no, I don't really. I guess the only question I have is, I asked this to someone previously, how do you deal with negativity on LinkedIn?
Well, again, I am by nature someone who's very impulsive. So if I had to listen to my, the voice in my head, I would be da 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 da, keyboard warrior, answering them. And I've learned breathe in, breathe out. People say count to 10, and I'm like more like breathe in, breathe out, inhale, exhale. And it kind of works. It calms me down, calms my nervous system, and then I think, well, do I really have to answer this first of all? Is there and now I and that's the beauty of growing up, of getting older rather. I ask myself,
very different thing.
Enough to be fair. and then I ask myself, is there any value to what this person is contributing, even though it's coming across as critical and aggressive and often condescending? As a woman, I do feel like I'm gaslit a lot. People do tend to be condescending if they're criticizing something I wrote. And so first of all, I realize that there's often some sort of value into even the harshest critics.
Yeah.
And so I do tend to take that. Now, if I feel like the person has been either condescending or impolite or besides the freaking point, because sometimes that's what happens, and that's actually what makes me angrier, really. I do tend to give an answer, and I try to stay as polite as possible, but as firm as possible as well. I'm not the type of person to go to run around the bush. Basically,
Yeah.
I am rather direct.
Mm.
And so even though I'm getting better at not responding impulsively and very very harshly, which would be the first instinct response, I do stay very true to myself and be very direct in what I say. Um, and again, sometimes it opens up to a more constructive topic discussion, and sometimes it just stops there. Um, and both are very, very good outcomes. For now, I've only ever had one post go absolutely viral, and it's something that I posted a couple of months ago. And I
Remember that
had
one.
comments, yeah, and I had comments, and honestly, it was the sheerest minority. It was like 2 or 3 comments from people basically telling me to stay in my lane. In other words, would have been stay in your lane. And it was along the lines. It was a post about an FDA warning on cell therapy, and
Oh yeah.
uh, 3 or 4 people were like,
Mm.
let the FDA do its job. Am I preventing the freaking FDA doing it? That would have been my reaction. Am I preventing the FDA doing its job by posting this?
No.
I don't
Yeah.
believe I am. The FDA doesn't need my permission nor my criticism. I'm just sharing my ideas. And so some of them were just like, stay in your lane.
Yeah.
No, sorry, I'm not gonna stay in my
No,
lane because
no.
you tell me to. And so, the first reaction would have been, you stay out of my post. But then the second degree to that was, if it's worth it, I'm going to answer with some degree of explanation. If it's not worth it, I'm just going to ignore it.
Yeah. But and
It's not worth it.
there's a beauty in actually having that kind of discourse because we shy away from very, very difficult conversations, and I remember that exact post because I thought a very similar thing, which is, it's a double-edged sword. Basically, you don't get an approval, or you don't get a accelerated approval in a very difficult to treat disease indication. What is the point? You're not instilling confidence in the
Exactly.
in investment to go do the treatment if the treatment is if any treatment is going to be deemed as unsuccessful, because the first thing that most people come in to do when they're doing life sciences is they want to solve a problem. And if you're being told by
Yeah, exactly.
the highest of authorities that you cannot do it simply because it's just too dangerous to do something like that, but even if there's some meaningful clinical meaningful benefit, it's like, well, what's the point? And I don't. And here's the thing that I thought that was very why I waded in as well, because one, there's an awareness thing that needs to come into play, which is that it doesn't revolve around a single this is more momentous for more than one reason, but the knowledge that
Yeah.
you put into this, the insight, the wrapped around a level of authenticity that is coming from you, is the most valuable bit, because it shows. And this is the thing that I don't think anybody else gets here in this is the pinnacle of great marketing, when you're able to display multiple dimensions of capability in a
Yeah.
response and in a post. When you do that, you gain credibility like nobody else. No white paper, no publication, no, probably a presentation might do it, but your responses of how to
Mm-mm.
deal with live fire criticism is the thing that's going to be
Yeah.
received more valuably. Because like us three here, we know exactly which post it is that you were talking about here, and it rings true with us. You can imagine everybody else that was in that sphere reading the same thing and thinking about those two people going, stay in your lane. And if you had stayed in your lane,
Yeah.
where would you be now? That's the calculated risk that we take with it. And I think that people need, when they are listening to this podcast, they go, this is probably one of the biggest things you should take away from it. That, you know, like Claudia, you took a massive risk doing saying something, and
Yeah.
I personally think it's paid off.
I'd like to think so. And again, as you said, it was a massive risk because, especially because I couldn't have imagined that it would go so viral.
Mm-hmm.
So imagine someone higher up reading that and going, "Oh, she's trying to stir the pot," you know,
Yeah,
um, which is something that's already happened to me in my life. You know,
yeah,
I've been known for being the one who wanted to stir the pot and then people wanting to basically put me in my lane and having me shut up, and
yeah.
I never shut up, so still have to learn that one.
But you don't
Still
make
have
good.
to learn that one.
You don't make a good coffee without stirring it slightly, do you? So, and I think, and that analogy is a bit overly simplistic, but I think to the point is that you're getting people to think about um,
Yeah,
other factors to consider. And you know, in your line of work, where you're having to advise other people about strategy, that's like, you know, it might be a bit like, you know, grasping at straws here, but the people that need to know and understand your capability will get it. That is like, that's it. You know, it's
I hope
nuance.
so, but it generally does put them in an uncomfortable position first. You know,
Yeah,
when you put them, especially during the analysis phase, which is the longest and the one where people are like very uncomfortable and like, when do we get to implementation? You know, and you have to set the boundaries and say, no, we have to do the analysis first. You
mm,
know, we have to go through this because otherwise we don't know how to do the implementation if you don't analyze where the problems are. And it puts them in such an uncomfortable position. And that's always the truth about being critical to things. And critical doesn't, you know, the term critical has a negative meaning in
yeah,
today's society, but it really means to just analyze things.
mm,
And so people are really uncomfortable when you get critical of situations,
mm.
even when they're paying you to do so. Um, but you know, once the discomfort has gone, you know,
Mm,
and it's true for pain. You know, if you're not injured but you're harmed,
mm,
um, pain will subside at some point.
yeah.
You know, if you cut your finger, it hurts at first, but then the pain subsides unless you reopen the
Mm.
cut. And so stay in that discomfort and maybe you'll learn something from that.
I feel like most scientists can deal with criticism.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
so too.
hopefully.
I think I do see a lot of people outside of science that cannot. And I think it's the nature of being in a science environment all the time. You're torn apart constantly,
Mm,
Oh yeah,
and you just get used to it.
yeah. I think there's two sides to that though, because if you're used to the criticism, do you then become numb to the criticism and don't necessarily see
yeah.
the,
No.
yeah. Okay, that's good, because then there's that. Then what's the two other the behaviors that will probably that come out from that is you learn from it and you get better from it, or you dig in your heels and say no, I disagree with it. And there's the two kind of scientists that do that, where they will flitter between the two depending on what their overarching goal behind this is. I notice it just, it is very arbitrary. If you're criticizing somebody who spent 15 to 20 years of their life on this particular line of therapeutic area, only to find out that their peers have pretty much said no, this is not safe, you shouldn't be doing this, yada yada yada. Then that scientist will dig their heels in, because it's an affront to their career that they've just been criticized on. Whereas if it's a little bit of work that they've done and they go, oh, I don't think you should have done it this way, you could have yielded better results, yada yada yada, if you'd done this kind of approach, I don't think people would dig their heels in so much about it. And I think that the context of like your investment into what you're being critiqued about is critical. Um,
Yeah.
especially, yeah. And I think marketing is one of those scenarios where like treat everything as low investment, even though the reality is it's a heavy investment in what you're doing, because the criticism is going to come in thick and fast. And if you are a marketer, a salesperson, and a scientist all in one go, you're probably the thickest skin there. You've got like literally the thickest skin.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you'll take everything.
Or
from
you
it.
better develop one, because
Yeah.
because the consumer will critique your product
And tear it apart, like, you know, and the best way of tearing it apart is not to buy it, right? So I think we're coming to the close of the podcast. We have one last question. It's a bit of a it's a tradition. I love it.
It's going to totally throw a spanner in the works, and you're going to be like,
Go on, Martina.
If you was going to walk into a room and be like, ta-da, and some music start playing, a song, what song would that be?
Depends on the room.
No, it can't. It has to be every room. Every room.
Any and every room. It will probably be okay. This is a bit of a nerd one. Do you know that soundtrack to Pirates of the Caribbean? He's first singing on that sinking boat, and he gets to Port Royal. That would be my intro song.
I love that.
I am so shocked. It's not,
I was not expecting that.
No, brilliant. I love it. I think this is probably the most creative of responses that we've had. Yeah, honestly.
Probably it would either be there or Enter the Sandman from Metallica. It depends. Again,
I like that too. I can imagine it as well. Big flowy gothy outfit, doors opening up. Yeah, got it.
I feel like those are the two sides to my personality, you know.
Hey, and a little bit of an insight. Yeah, so you're gonna get, with your consulting, heavy high eyeliner and some serious tunes. That's it.
I got my things.
Claudia, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, mine too.
Oh, I love
Thank
this.
you so much, guys, for having me.
And if
Thank you.
I assume that if people want to follow you, where can they find you?
Well, obviously on LinkedIn, we've been talking about
maybe on TikTok in the future.
Right?
Oh yeah, maybe. I'll try. We'll see. No pressure, please.
No, of course not. I mean, if you go on TikTok, then us two, we have no choice. We have to be in there as well, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I put your level of peer pressure on us. So yeah, don't hold me to it. No, but it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
It's been a delight. Thank you.
And this actually signs off the final episode for season 2. So keep your ears peeled, not with an actual peeler, for the season 3. But I hope that this season has helped you really get to grips with the personalities that do use marketing to market their science, and how they utilize it. Because quite frankly, it's not actually a difficult exercise when you strip the emotional hoo-ha behind it. It's very straightforward. The only difficulty is actually cutting through the noise in such a noisy environment such as marketing. So thank you so much for everybody listening to this season. I hope you had a fantastic time, and I hope you have a good day, whatever time, wherever you are. Thank you very much.
Bye, everyone. Bye.
Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed the podcast. And if you liked our content, then please hit subscribe and like our Spotify and LinkedIn pages. If you want more helpful life sciences marketing tips, then follow me and Martina on LinkedIn. Don't hesitate to DM us with your questions.